Presentation of dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore and Bettis family legacy of building the great state of Idaho. By the Friends of Idaho Public Television, by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by the Idaho Public Television Endowment.
What if you did the worst thing imaginable? Are you still you?
Coming up, a conversation with novelist Emily Ruskovich about how beauty can be found even in tragedy, and how one of the world's biggest literary prizes has changed her life. That's Dialogue next. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Marcia Franklin. My guest today found the inspiration for her first novel, Idaho, right in her home state. For the book, Emily Ruskovich drew on her memories of growing up on remote Hoodoo Mountain in the Idaho Panhandle. But the novel's storyline is decidedly more sinister than her bucolic childhood, as you will learn. Ruskovich, who teaches creative writing at Boise State University, is already catching the attention and acclaim of reviewers all over the world. In 2015, one of her short stories won an O. Henry Award. And in 2019, Ruskovich won the Dublin Literary Prize for Idaho. The award, which carries with it more than $100,000, makes it the richest prize for a novel in the English language. In their citation, the judges called Idaho a masterful achievement. I spoke with Emily Ruskovich at the 2019 Sun Valley Writers Conference. I started by asking her about this amazing time in her life, which also includes an important addition to her family. Well, I don't have to welcome you to Idaho like I have been doing for the other writers. Well, you are from Idaho. Yeah. Your book is called Idaho. So no introduction to Idaho is needed for sure.
Well, thank you for having me.
Of course. And I can't start without first saying congratulations.
Thank you so much.
It was amazing to hear about your award, and I'm sure it was amazing for you to, was it a phone call to pick up the phone and hear about it?
Yeah, it was a phone call. I was just sitting in the backyard with my baby and my rabbit, and happened to hear the phone, and it was my editor in England. And I couldn't believe what she was telling me. I had to have her say it a few times because it was, just such an incredible honor, and it's really changed my life.
In what way?
It's just brought me such a wider readership internationally, and it's such a privilege to just be able to speak on the novel's behalf again.
And it'll give you some time. I mean, obviously there's a monetary
that too, yeah, absolutely. It's an incredible amount of money. It's a shocking amount of money, and I don't think I've really comprehended that part of it yet, but it's going to help so much, and giving me time to write my next book. We can hire a nanny. So it's such a gift in so many ways.
What was it like to go to Dublin and pick it up?
It was so exciting. It was very secretive. I wasn't allowed to check into the hotel under my own name because it's very publicized in Dublin, so everybody knew who was on the short list, and only the winner comes to Dublin to when the award's announced. So if they knew that I was there, they would know that I had won. And so I was kind of hidden, before the award was announced. And then I was hidden at the.
You didn't have to wear like a wig and sunglasses.
No, I just they were very careful, and it was fun, and just such an honor. And I felt such a deep connection to Ireland. I'd always wanted to go. So then it was just like a beautiful, incredible thing that it was my writing that brought me to Ireland all these years later. And it was such an act of generosity. They just wanted to give me this money, to support the arts, and I just felt so touched. I'm still so touched, and it makes me feel really like I kind of have a second country in a way because of the way I was treated there. And it was the nomination process is really interesting. It begins in libraries, which is very moving to me because it's real people, real readers, and they're finding books that mean something to them and they're putting them forward. And so making the shortlist alone was one of the greatest things that had ever happened to my career, because on there with, George Saunders and Sally Rooney and other authors I really admire. And most of them were nominated by many libraries around the world. George Saunders, I think, was nominated by 10 or so libraries around the world. And my book was nominated by one person, one very kind librarian in Bruges, Belgium, who read it in Dutch and put it forward. And so I spoke to her on Skype, actually, and just thanked her and said how strange that you're there. You're this person, and I've never met you, but you've changed my life forever. And it was very moving, and it's kind of an emotional award. And it's also meaningful because it's what the novel is about, especially female friendships that. There's two women in the novel, Anne and Jenny, and they don't know each other, but they're connected in this way that is so profound. And it just makes me think about, all the lives that we touch accidentally each day, and how meaningful each of us can be to each other.
Well, another congratulations is in order, and that is because you are a mom.
Yeah.
Your daughter is about a year old, is that right?
She just turned 13 months, yeah.
And her name is June.
Her name is June.
Which is an important, very important name in your book, and we'll get to that in a moment.
Sure.
She's a protagonist in your book, albeit an absent one. Mm-hmm. And I've read that she's the character in the book that you most identify with as well. So I'm assuming that the name choice was intentional?
Well, it was actually, we were nervous about naming her June because we really wanted to name her June after, just the word June is so beautiful, and after a June day. June is just, I think, the most beautiful month. And it's just a name that both my husband and I have always loved, and I used it for the novel because that character is June. But then when I became pregnant, I did feel like I had stolen that name away from my future daughter, and my husband Sam said, it's just too bad that we can't name her June. And I said, I know, but people would think it's strange that I would name my daughter after a missing child. And he said, yeah, we can't do it. And then another month would go by, and he'd say, it is such a beautiful name, though. And I'd say, I know, but we can't do it. And then 9 months went by, and then at that 9th month, he said, well, do you think it'd be strange? And I said, well, I don't think it'd be strange. Do you think it'd be strange? And he said, I don't think it'd be strange. So we named her June. And, it's so it's not after the novel, it's after a June day, and it's just after, the feelings that we both have for the name. But there's one aspect of the novel that I do think of when I think of her, and that's that Wade names his daughter June because it's a name that survives. There's a whole story to that, and that there's something strong in that name that will survive even the loss of a memory. And I do like that about her, that I've given her a name that has survival in it.
You said she's 13 months.
Yeah.
We're sitting here in July, so was she born in June as well?
Yeah, she was. It was perfect.
That's great. Well, let's talk a little bit about the plot. It's relational. There's a lot of relationships involved, unfortunately, that start with a really horrific act.
Yeah.
And that is two little girls are with their parents in the woods getting some firewood, and one is, and we don't know why or how, murdered by her own mother.
Yeah.
And the other child, her name is May, the girl that was killed, and the other child, June, disappears.
Yeah.
And so the story really looks at how people move on or try to move on or cope with such an act.
Yeah. And not just the act, but that there are no answers. So it's about love, ultimately, because I didn't decide to write a book about a mother who kills her child. That isn't something I decided to do. It was sort of what I had. It was what I was given. And from that point of such despair and horror, I wanted still to be able to find joy and life and meaning. And so the event, this horrible event, happens 9 years before the novel opens. And it actually opens with the new wife, Anne, as you know. And Anne has married Wade, but in marrying him, she's not just married a person, but she's married herself to his whole life, and that means marrying himself to his history and to his former family.
And Wade is the father.
And Wade's the father who's lost everything. He's suffered loss on so many levels, and now he's found love again. But he's also losing his memories, and Anne, as an act of love, is trying to save those memories, even though the memories are very, very, very painful, and even though the memories aren't hers, she feels this great duty to honor his family and to honor him by preserving them. And so in trying to remember for him, she has to think about what happened, and she can't understand how did this happen, and it's something I don't fully understand either, and I don't think Jenny, who committed the murder, I don't think she understands. And so this unlikely kinship forms between Anne and Jenny silently over a period of many years. And
because Jenny's in prison,
Jenny's
Pocatello Women's Prison.
Yeah, well, it's called Sage Hill Prison, but it's based on the Pocatello Women's Correctional Center, and she feels just sick about what she's done. She's still in shock all these years later, and she wishes she could have died for what she did, and she believes that she's not deserving of even the smallest amount of kindness. She's so horrified at her own actions. And yet kindness finds her, and love finds her, and friendship finds her against her will, accidentally. And so it's also about, the saving grace of friendship, female friendship in particular, and of compassion and forgiveness. And if Jenny can find those things after what she's done, when she doesn't believe that she deserves any of it, if she can still find meaning through small acts of kindness, it's very hopeful to me. Like when I read my novel and when I think about my novel, I feel so much hope, which I know sounds strange given the premise, but it is about if she can do that, what can we do? What is kindness capable of? And I think it's capable of really extraordinary things. I've always loved Jenny in spite of what she's done, and I had to love her. In order to write a book about compassion, I had to find a way to empathize with her, and I did that by giving her qualities of my mom, whom I love deeply, deeply, deeply. And I just imagined, what if you did the worst thing imaginable? Are you still you? If you've done something that's outside of yourself, if you've done something so horrible, what happens to who you are? And that's sort of what I was exploring with Jenny.
And with Wade, the father, you infused him with some qualities of your own father, as well. Does that help you with with the characters? And as I mentioned earlier, June has some elements of you in it. May has some elements of your sister.
Yeah, it's not just that it helps me; it's that it's who they are. It's the characters are my family, even though they're not my family, and I love them. My characters, I love them like people. There are parts of the book I can't. There are parts of the novel I can't read aloud or talk about too much, just because it is so sad. The novel is meant to exalt my family and my own very, very happy childhood. And all of the details in the novel, aside from the horror, all of the details are from my life. And I wanted to give these children and this family as much joy as possible, so that there would be something beautiful that lasts even after their family is destroyed.
Well, let's talk about your life. You grew up in North Idaho, and north of Coeur d'Alene, and your parents were essentially homesteaders. I mean, they tried to carve out an existence on this mountain without the benefit of a house. You lived in tents, is that right?
Yeah.
Near your animals or with your animals?
Yeah.
Until the house could be built.
Well, first we built a barn, and then we lived in the barn together. And I lived in the stall where the pigs would be, my sister in the stall where the goats would be, and my brother in the stall where the chickens would be, and then built the house and moved up to the house. Well, we had the house built.
And I love the way that you describe it, because it's the feeling that I have gotten when I've been in that area as well, which is simultaneously beautiful and then a little scary or eerie in parts of it.
When I think about that time on the mountain when we lived without electricity, without running water, we were just filling up jugs of water from the park down in Spirit Lake and bringing them home. It fills me with so much nostalgia. It was so wonderfully fun just to be, all we had were books and our imaginations and the wilderness. And but yeah, it was kind of a dangerous place. We had this lovely 40 acres, but all around us there were dangerous people. We were robbed many times. We didn't have a lot of neighbors that we could trust or even that we knew.
The genesis for this story was really a feeling that you got when you were with your own family collecting firewood, not on the mountain where you live, but on a neighboring one.
Yeah.
Talk about the sensations that you had that day.
I had never felt anything like it. We were just, usually my dad cut our own firewood and on our mountain, but this year he had a back injury and couldn't do it. So we drove to a mountain that wasn't ours, a faraway mountain that I don't think I could ever find again. And there was just a stack of birchwood that had been cut, and all we had to do was load it onto the truck. And I stepped out of the truck and I just felt this pain, this sorrow. And it was as if it was like rising up from the ground, and it was like I had stepped into a memory that I didn't have, that this place had. And there was nothing physical that would create this memory. It was a lovely afternoon. There was, crows sunning themselves on the birch logs, and there was wild flocks and I think the sound of a river. It was just a lovely place, but it just felt so like something very, very painful had happened there. And I carried this around with me. My mom says it was like I was in a kind of trance, which is not common for me at all, but that I just was not myself. And I carried the feeling with me for quite a while. And it was only through writing that I found out what I felt the place was remembering. And it was this horrifying thing. And I didn't want it to be that thing. I did not want it to be that a mother had killed her child there. But that's what I found. And so that was what I had to work with.
And you're a professor, you teach at Boise State. When you're talking to students about the writing process, do you tell them about the process that you just went through and encourage them in any way to, not set out with an outline, but to let the story come to them?
Absolutely. I think that's the most important thing to do as a beginning writer, as a writer at any stage, is just listen to your heart and listen to what fascinates you. And if your heart catches on something that you don't understand, there's a reason, and that reason is probably a story.
You do not come to any conclusions about the actual murder itself. That was intentional, yes?
Yeah, and it's about how to live when there aren't answers, and it seems unlivable. Like how, there are people who never know where their child went, and my editors had hoped that I would find June, and I just told them that I couldn't, that I didn't know where she was, and that I felt that it would be a betrayal to what was real to me and also to families who have lost a child to find June, because so many people have to live with that mystery and just these hypothetical futures lived out in their minds every day, and it would have not been real or right or honest if I had found her. And the murder itself is not. I've not given Jenny's perspective on why she did it, because I don't think there is a perspective on why she did it. I don't think that there could ever be a reason to kill a child. Anne gives us a reason, and that's the closest I can come to what may have been happening in Jenny's mind, but that's from Anne's perspective, which is, flawed for many reasons. And of course she finds herself in that moment. She finds that she's to blame, and maybe But it's beside the point to me. It's whatever the reason was, if there was a quote unquote reason, it is nothing compared to what occurred. It is, I think Jenny would feel disgusted at the idea of even trying to explain why she did what she did, because I don't think there is a why. I think it's something that happened. The answers that aren't in the book because I've withheld something. I've given you everything that I know. It's because there's just things that I don't have access to, just as the characters don't.
Talk to me a bit about Alzheimer's. Wade, the father of these two children, is losing his memories because he has early onset dementia, Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah.
You have an interest in Alzheimer's. You've always had an interest in that, haven't you?
Yeah, I remember the first day I learned what it was. I was a little kid and we were at a fair, of all places. It was just a lovely day, and I heard somebody mention somebody having Alzheimer's disease, and I just asked my mom, what is that? And she said, oh, it's this terrible thing. It's a disease that takes your memory when you're older. And it was the most horrible thing I had ever heard in my life. And I could not believe that such evil lived on earth and that we have to live with it, and that there's nothing you can do about it. And so I've been so fortunate that I've never lost somebody to Alzheimer's disease, and I hope with all my heart that I never have to see that. But I've listened my whole life to people who have, and the bravery and the beauty with which they can speak about their loved ones, even when their loved ones are losing themselves, has always moved me so much. And I wanted to write about a character who is losing his memories, but who is still himself, because I believe very strongly that you are who you are, separate of your memories and separate of actions that you may commit when you're in the midst of a disease that's trying to take away who you are. And I just wanted to give dignity to somebody who's suffering that, and to the loved one who has to bear it.
The name Idaho, it's normal for us to hear the word Idaho, and maybe not so much for other people, but I know you really had to, in some ways, fight for that name to stay.
Yeah.
Because some people thought it would be, it's a nonfiction book about, issues in Idaho or something.
Right.
But that was important to you to keep that name.
It was, because there's a lot of history to that name, and that was the most research I did for the whole novel, was on the history of Idaho. And I think the history that's in the novel is, I don't think it's written anywhere else. And it's a lost name, and it means nothing. It really means nothing. It's named after, long ago, a little girl named Ida. I didn't know when I started researching the name Idaho that what I would find at the end of this search was two little girls. I had no idea. And what I did find was that there's a girl named Ida and a girl named Idaho much later. And those two girls are lost to each other and lost to history until now. And since it's about two lost girls, it was just it felt like more than a coincidence, because I think that when you really are searching for something that you want to find thematically in a novel, you'll find it, and that was quite the gift.
We're in an interesting time right now where we've got two books by women from Idaho. Tara Westover and yours. Is it synchronicity? Is it coincidence? Do you think that something is happening in Idaho literature where we're seeing women from Idaho writing?
I hope so. I think so. I hope it's more than coincidence. I think this place has a profound effect on a lot of people, and that a lot of people, if they put pen to paper, would discover things about their feelings for Idaho that maybe they didn't know. And I hope it's a product of more voices being encouraged, in schools and universities, for everybody to tell their story.
I know you're interested in writing memoir yourself.
Yeah. It's just such an impulse for me to preserve things, and to preserve the things that I love and the people that I love. And so I think memoir would be a very different approach, and I don't know a lot about it, so I'll have to certainly learn. But I do hope to write a memoir someday.
I know you said you missed your characters when this book was published, but in a way they keep living, even through your daughter June, they keep living.
And through readers. You know, there was a period of time between when I did my last edit and before it came out on the shelves that I really mourned the book. I just mourned that I couldn't be with them, that I couldn't feed them and have them interact anymore, that they were this final product. And that just wasn't real, because the moment that it was on the shelf, they became living again, because they're inside of all of my readers. And that has been such a gift that readers are generally quite open with me at readings. They'll come and they'll tell me sometimes very painful things, very intimate things, and it's because they know me through my novel, and I know them because they're people in the world that are coming to my reading, and I see their faces and they're telling me their stories, and that's been the greatest privilege of publishing a novel, is just what people will say to me. And it's amazing. There are just people walking around us all the time with unfathomable pain inside of them, and they're fully functioning and they're smiling and they're going about their day and they have their jobs and they have their children, and there's so much to any person that you would just never guess, that I'm getting some of that from readers is just such an honor.
Great. Well, I look forward to whatever you come up with next.
Thank you.
And I'm glad we finally have had the opportunity to talk. It seems a little odd or crazy that you live in Boise, I live in Boise, and we have to meet in Sun Valley, but we've both had very busy lives.
Yeah,
so,
and what a nice place to meet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm delighted to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you.
And that's all the time we have. You've been listening to novelist Emily Ruskovich, who teaches creative writing in Boise State University's MFA program. Our conversation was recorded at the 2019 Sun Valley Writers Conference. My thanks to the organizers of that event for allowing us to interview some of their enlightening speakers. For more information and to stream our programs, please check out our website. Just go to idahoptv.org and click on Dialogue. For Dialogue, I'm Marcia Franklin. Thanks for tuning in.
Presentation of Dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore and Bettis family legacy of building the great state of Idaho. By the Friends of Idaho Public Television, by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by the Idaho Public Television Endowment. Check out our website, become a friend on Facebook, or follow us on Twitter.